I have 5:01 p.m. on Thursday, April 23rd, 2020. This is a special Board of Education meeting. We are all meeting from our homes and various places due to the COVID-19 emergency. So we are all participating via Zoom pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, Section 8, and Emergency Order 12, Section 3. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Corbino, when you're ready, could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Corbino is here. Ms. Johnson?
Present.
Ms. Ziem has not yet joined us. Okay. Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Giglio?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Ms. Raymond?
Here.
Ms. Oden?
Here.
Ms. Timmons?
Here.
Okay, also with us tonight, we have Dr. Moseley. Here. Dr. McKinney.
Here.
Ms. Fitzpatrick.
Here.
Ms. O'Gara.
Here.
We have Ms. Kinsella. And Mr. Richard.
Here.
And Mr. Donovan.
Here.
And did I leave anyone out? I think I have everybody.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
We
you.
have a
Very,
quorum.
thank you very much, Mr. Corbino, and we'll keep an eye out for Ms. Ziem. Hopefully she'll be able to join us. So this evening, we have a few items before us that we didn't feel like we should wait until next week. As everybody on the board knows, we had to move our next week's meeting until Thursday due to some scheduling conflicts to make sure that it could be aired live as we have it. So some things that have been popping up and I think we need to talk about. The first item I have on my list is the class of 2020 graduation.
Okay. All right. Sure.
That's okay.
Yes,
All right.
Dr. Moseley, take it away.
A couple of. I guess I'll just kind of talk broadly. I start by saying I don't want to be Debbie Downer. It's kind of, it is what it is. Certainly that, it's disappointing that we can't do this in a way that is safe for our community members and for all who are involved. One of the things we have to recognize with graduation is that the timing of this, what it feels and looks like. We're currently right now in a shelter in place and practicing social distancing. The number of COVID-19 cases in the state of New Hampshire, but also the nation, continues to rise. And so part of this is, what do we do? In a district this size, it takes a long time to coordinate and plan the graduations with two of them. And certainly part of this is that we have been thinking about this graduation piece actually probably at the beginning of April. And so part of this is that we typically have our graduations for the public and for the new board members. We have it at SNU. We usually have one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We alternate that depending on the year. It's typically on Father's Day. It's a great event. We also, in addition to having staff, faculty, parents traveling into Manchester, we also provide a bus, usually two buses, I believe, Keith, or one bus?
Usually one bus per high school.
One bus per high school for kids whose parents can't make the graduation. We provide that level of transportation so that they can attend. And so that's kind of our basic format for graduation. It usually takes about an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And so that's our event. So talking and having discussions with building principals and what have you. At this time, the virtual graduation is the best option in terms of safety. Totally understand that that's not what people want to hear. Totally understand how this is going to affect people's that moment. We get it. And we're not saying no, we're not going to have it. But at the same time, to plan such a prodigious undertaking can't be done in 2 weeks. It can't be done in 3 weeks. It actually takes about a month, if not longer, to do it for 2 schools. So we started having discussions internally about that. We sent some notification about that. We've received some great ideas around graduation. When the governor decides to lift the current restrictions on gatherings and what we can do and can do in public, we will be the first ones to plan that graduation. We've heard, like, how about you decide to do some social distancing during the graduation, spacing. We have a number of concerns around that. Number one, we rely heavily on our teachers to help us facilitate the graduation. Many of our teachers help our kids in so many ways through this event that would be nearly impossible for us to even start to even maintain and monitoring the social distancing. Some of our faculty may require PPEs, protective gear, when they're there. We do not know who has the coronavirus. We don't know what family members are going to be there. We don't know how to manage that in a large gathering, and certainly it would put our families and our faculty at risk to do anything like that. I want to just thank Keith Richards, Nate, the people who are actually trying to put this together for our kids. It's not the best situation, it just isn't. But at the same time, to have a large gathering of individuals out there for these graduations would put, number one, it would put us in direct contradiction to all of the CDC guidelines, the governor's recommendation. We would be, it would be on so many levels, would be not appropriate. And so certainly I would conclude this conversation by saying, we're going to do this, no doubt about it. We're going to do the graduation, but we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it with safety in mind. Thank you.
I see you, Ms. Johnson and Ms. Timmons. I just have a couple of quick questions. What are the class sizes of graduating seniors in the high schools? Do we know thereabouts yet?
We typically shoot, for around 400, I would say, for both.
Okay.
So you think talking about 800 plus graduates.
Okay, so that's quite a bit. And then can you flesh out for us a little bit more what you mean by a virtual graduation? I'm seeing a lot of stuff online about what other districts are doing. I'm getting a lot of questions from family members about what does that mean, a virtual graduation?
Yeah, I could take that, Dr. Moseley, if you'd like.
Oh.
So just to kind of reiterate some of the stuff Dr. Moseley said is Nate Burns, who can't be here tonight, but we felt June 21st, we're not going to be large gatherings. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And there was concern about it postpone it a month, and then what happens if that gets postponed again? So Nate and I really felt that it'd be important to have a ceremony on the day that we had graduation, June 21st. There's going to be a very good chance that people are going to be sitting at their homes thinking that this is the day I should have graduated and walked across that stage. And we thought that they should have something to celebrate with their families. So we looked into different virtual graduations. So the company that we have settled with, essentially, we signed the paperwork, got that going today. So essentially, each graduate will have a chance to personalize their screen, their slide. Think of it as, I'm going to probably dumb it down a little bit more than what it is, but say each graduate gets a slide. They get to personalize it with a message, with their accolades. You can also do a personalized audio message, their photo, and it'll go in line, and their name will be announced. We can add speeches to it as if, we were at this new arena. I'll do an address. We can have students do addresses at the beginning and then go through the line of students that they get to personalize. So we'll have a captive audience. We have our seniors here. That information will go out soon. And that was another thing that we were concerned about. You postpone it for a month. You postpone it for 3 months. Some kids are going to move on. They're going to join the military and be overseas or, in boot camp, things like that. Kids are going to go off to colleges. The world is going to be theirs at that point, and it's not going to be a captive audience for some potentially. And we wanted to make sure that while we have our seniors here with us still under the banner of Nashua South and Nashua North, that we had some sort of a celebration for all of their restaurants.
Right. And the plan is to broadcast it through ETV on local access. Is there?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I had Miss Johnson first and then Miss Timmons. Did I miss any other hands? Okay, we'll start with Miss Johnson then, please.
Okay, thank you. I wish it would have been brought to the board completely before you signed any contracts and we would have known anything, because we've got some parents that are really upset about this. Emails are coming in. And I had thought about a plan. It would have been outside. We had facilities like Holman Stadium, Stello Stadium, and maybe divided into 6, 7, 3 weekends and divided up into small crowds. No more than 2 guests that can come, face masks, sit down and talk with Bobby Bagley to see how we could use our own facilities here. Now, we used to graduate kids at Holman Stadium, so we could have done every 2 seats, every other row, and we would have had the social distancing here. And the kids could have been outside and had a graduation with contingency plans if it rained for another weekend. But if we could have done 2, 3 classes, maybe divide the whole thing up into small groups and spread them out between Stellos and Holman Stadium, I think that would have been a nice plan if we would have sat down and talked about this. But we didn't. And I'm not happy because these emails were coming in, not knowing anything, exactly what was going on. And parents were saying, this isn't right, do your job. Well, I can't do my job if I don't know what's going on, so we can't throw out any additional proposals here. This would have been open space, wouldn't have cost us very much money. We could have geared everybody up and included the state epidemiologist's office if we had to, and Bobby Bagley, and sat down and discussed it with them and see if it could have worked. So I'll tell you, I'm not happy on this, and not happy at all. Thank you.
I'll respond, and I'll just say that a couple of things. I'm not putting the safety of kids in jeopardy. Keith, you don't have to respond to it. I'll take full responsibility for this. To manage 800 kids at one event plus.
It's not one event, and I did not say one event. So you're changing the words on me.
All right, so I'm going to jump in here and just, especially because we're on this Zoom format, can we make sure that we let one person speak and then when they're done, have your other say? But if people are interrupting it, it gets very confusing. Go ahead, Dr. Moseley.
I finish. The other piece to this is that graduation has always been at the building level. It's something that has never come to the board. If that's the way that some of the board members want to go, then that's fine. I was unaware of that. It's always been at the building level with the principals, particularly around the logistics of graduation, who graduates, what forum, who goes first, who goes second. And so that's where that it belongs there. But certainly if that's where the board shall yield and want to be in that arena, then, just let us know. And I think that would be to clarify for that. Anytime that I've gotten correspondence for graduation or anything like that, I've always directed that to the building principal. The building principal has actually helped me understand some of the parameters around graduation and how that works out. The bottom line is this, is that we don't have to put our faculty in that situation, in this environment, when there's a shelter in place, particularly with the COVID-19 and what we're finding out about this new virus. And to police it would put our faculty at risk, would put our general public at risk. And having it Holman Stadium the way that it's been described would go against all of the recommendations from the CDC and from where the governor has recommended. I don't think that it would fare well for us to go against the governor's recommendation on social distancing and gatherings.
Can I respond, please?
Sure.
I'm not asking to put anybody at risk. I would never put anybody at risk. But it would have been nice if we could have gotten a second opinion about this from the health department, because we don't know what's going to happen in June. Come the next 2 weeks, things could really start opening up, and the governor's planning to start opening things up. I was talking social distancing. People would not be on top of each other. And if we had to do it more than one class at a time, but they had the chance to walk and be part of the ceremony. And they've worked their whole life for this. And I understand we've got something that we've never had before, but I don't think we kind of thought out of the box here either, because there have been other high schools that did do it across a stadium in different states, and they had that social distancing. So I'm not looking to put anybody at risk, but I think we could have gotten some opinion and gotten some help maybe from Bobby Bagley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to point out that we are still under the governor's stay-at-home orders for social distancing and no gatherings more than 10. We don't know right now when or if he will lift that, but with 99 cases yesterday and 86 today, it doesn't seem like we're close to flattening the curve. So I think putting our kids' safety first is part of, it's frankly in our charter. And I also just want to reiterate what Dr. Moseley said about graduation has never been the purview of the board. It has always been the purview of the building principals and administrators. And the board gets to participate, but we participate by showing up, which is wonderful. And I'm sad that we're going to miss it this year. I had Ms. Timmons next.
Thank you, Madam Chair, President. One, I kind of disagree with Ms. Johnson. I have a graduate this year, and we will not be doing social distancing, period. I wouldn't be there, and they wouldn't be there. Either of my family members would not be at that meeting. That's number one. Anything that's a gathering will not be there. So I think the idea that virtual graduation is a great idea. In fact, June 21st is an excellent idea because technically the kids are finally finished in school. So I like that date because getting feedback from my grandchildren and their friends, they all said they will not go to a virtual graduation in August, just so you know that. Secondly, Ms. Raymond already asked a question which you answered. So that was the question that I had. And I wanted to know one other thing. What does virtual graduation actually look like? How would a grandparent like myself and other members out there view this graduation?
Yep, so it's going to be streamed online. So it's a link that we'll be able to share, but also it's something that Channel 99 could also display on their TV. So one thing is, obviously, with shelter in place, families aren't probably going to be able to get together as they normally would for a graduation. But once we are able to share the link, everybody could have a watching party, in their own homes and things like that. So as long as there's technology in the home, I think everybody should be able to view the virtual graduation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Mr. Corbino, did you want to weigh in on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the safety of the children comes first, and the safety of our community comes first. Unfortunately, it's something we have no control over. And if the governor has said that we can't have school till the end of the year, well, the end of the year is in June. So even to try to have a graduation where there's social distancing, I think would probably be impossible because we're probably, if the governor says we don't have school till June, then we probably can't have that either. I don't know how something like that would work. And in those other things that I've seen on the internet where they've had people in stadiums, there's nobody in the stadium. There's just basically these high schools are small. There's no one in the stadium. So I don't think it's a good alternative. I think there's really, these are circumstances beyond our control, unfortunately, and no one is more brokenhearted than myself not to see my daughter walk across the stage. But that's just the way it has to be because our lives come first, and the students' safety comes first, and the community safety comes first, unfortunately. So I think having a virtual, if we have to have a virtual graduation, then that's the way it is. And maybe we can do something in August. And I know not everyone can be there, but if we can do something in August, even if we have to wait till 2021, I'm willing to do that to keep everyone safe.
Thank you, Mr. Guarino. Ms. Oden, did I see you trying to indicate that you had a comment?
No, but I just want to say, I know there are a lot of logistical issues in setting up graduation, and certainly I'm disappointed. For me, it's a high point of being on the board to see some of those students I had as first graders walk across the stage and get their diploma. It's just amazing. So I'm disappointed. I do have one question, though, and I hate to bring it up. I know we usually go to the center up in Manchester, and we reserve it months before the event takes place. So if we put a deposit down, are they going to refund our deposit?
This is Dan. We did not put a deposit down, so we're all set.
We're not losing anything. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Raymond.
On mute. You're on mute.
Got it. I just have one last question. And that is, you said each student will get their own slide that they can add their own information to in their photo. How is that being distributed? Like, what's the contact with the students so that they have the opportunity to do that? And what is the outreach, I guess, for students who might have difficulty accessing the internet and, computer access?
Yep. So what I'm becoming a quick study of this, but this is new to us as well. So essentially, students will have an email sent, and we'll use our school emails that they've been using to log into all of their Google Classrooms and things like that. And essentially, it gets them into a portal, and then they just upload their picture, their message, things like that. So they each have their own individual portal. It's something that I believe we can monitor, and we're going to make sure that just as we are on them, making sure they're getting their work done, we're going to be on our seniors to make sure that they don't miss out on this opportunity as well. So,
thank you, Mr. Richard. It's very important to me that everyone gets their chance to participate. So anyone else have any comments or questions? Ms. Bishop? All right, Ms. Bishop, did you want to comment?
Yeah. Are they able, so I know we can stream it somewhere. Is there a downloadable copy that they can have?
I imagine it's something they can save, yes. And
Maybe a CD.
A CD. I still have my VHS from when we did this back in '99.
I'd be careful giving that date out.
It's fine. Everyone knows me.
Again, I don't mean like, I don't even know if they make, Keith, I'll defer to you. A CD works because you can always, retain it in some way, but I'm assuming there's got to be a download. I mean, I don't know. I'll defer to you, Keith.
Well, I'll be honest that we have recruited Jeff Leone, who's our TV productions teacher, who puts out fantastic work. So he may have been signed up as an administrator in this program today, and he's on board. So we're going to be utilizing his resources and his expertise, to be honest with you. And he helped us when we were looking at different options. We wanted to make sure it's a quality option. So he's been part of the conversation all along.
Cool. I think this is a great idea, just even for prosperity, just to have it. So I think you guys came up with a good alternative, and I'm proud that we came up with it. Thank you.
The idea really is, and what we envisioned on the June 21st, and again, this is thinking out loud, just keep it all in perspective, is like the TV will have, typically our graduations are about an hour and a half-ish, but really it would be an all-day event where, the graduations would be lengthy. People would watch the speeches, they'd hear their names called, and it would be an event for both schools. So it would be kind of some nice entertainment and exhilaration for our kids and for our families. And to Mr. Guarino, I'm very sorry. I wish it was under better circumstances, but we're going to make it right. We've been looking at some things. We know that a lot of our alumni come back for that Thanksgiving weekend-ish, If things get cleared up there, we'll do it. We also know that our kids come home, whether we like it or not, they come home for Christmas too, and during the Christmas break, that's when we notice that a lot of our kids, I say kids, I'm sorry, I don't mean kids, but you know what I mean, our alumni tend to come home during holiday events. So we're still looking to, once this all clears up, we're going to set a date and make sure, in addition to doing this, we're going to make sure we get a contact of our graduates. So when this all clears up, we can reach out to them.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Moseley. I don't see any other hands. So the next item on our agenda is high school grading.
I'm sorry, Miss Raymond. I apologize. I see staff payroll first.
Oh, do you? I might have.
Am I missing something? Are you?
No, it's probably me. I'm wondering if I'm using the wrong.
Tara, am I reading the right thing or?
Yep, staff payroll should be.
Okay, let's do staff payroll.
I didn't know if you were intentionally skipping that.
No, I think I just printed out a draft copy instead of the actual copy.
Okay.
So, which I can't find. So I will just kind of.
I see staff payroll, class of graduation, high school grading, and then school belongings.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. I apologize to everyone for going out of order. That was not intentional. Just I printed the wrong thing. So, I feel like this being at home with the whole family utilizing the same resources is it's getting a little crazy. And welcome to Sandra Ziem. I see that you have joined us. Welcome. Okay, so staff payroll is next. And so the reason that I asked for this special meeting was because we had a motion last to pay our staff through tomorrow. So we need a motion to continue paying them. My suggestion is to make the motion until May 29th, but I'm open to hearing from board members on what they want to do. Obviously, we'll be continuing remote learning at least until the end of May.
Can I have a question?
Yes, you and then Ms. Ziem.
Doing it till May 29th, would it make more sense to do it till just the end of the year? And then if we end up back in school, we can reevaluate then?
You mean a calendar year?
No, the school year.
I would.
We're not ending on May 29th.
Right.
We haven't discussed, did I mute myself? We haven't discussed an end date for the year. Right now, it is scheduled for June 15th. So that's where we're at. So
Can we just,
oh, go ahead, Ms. Bishop.
can we just honor the contract till the end of the school year and then open up some more time for us to discuss other things?
Yes, we can do that. Ms. Ziem? Oh, Ms. Ziem, you're on mute.
Ms. Ziem, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Which button?
Oh, I can hear you.
Thank you. I'm glad. Most people can hear more from me than they want to. Wouldn't it make sense for us to discuss first, if we're going to change the ending date, then shouldn't we do that first and then come back to this second thing?
Honestly, I don't even know if we're going to discuss changing the end date, but we certainly need to make sure people get paid for next week and beyond, because that's time critical.
Yes, well, I wouldn't want to, yes, that's true. If you're not sure we're going to discuss it, then absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Bishop?
But even if we change the end of the school date, aren't we still contractually obligated to pay people the full whatever amount of days it is? So even if the end date changes, we still have to pay them. Yeah. So the end date doesn't matter except for the students.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. So we are contractually
No, that isn't correct.
Okay.
There is no daily, hourly people. If they don't work, you don't have to pay them. There's an argument back and forth on that. So I think I don't know why you want to change the end of the school year, but if you do, that I would agree with Miss Raymond to agree to the 29th, and you can have that discussion later. But there are some positions that I don't think we would continue to pay if we ended the school year early.
Okay, fair enough, Dan. We just talked about which bargaining units they belong in, but there are contracts that, to Miss Bishop's point, that require us to pay employees 180 days.
So I make that
They work
motion.
those days.
Wait, hold on. Too many people are talking at once. Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I thought you said something else.
Yeah, no, I think there's just the contractual language we should probably, I'm sure different people feel differently about how the contract reads. But they read differently. Some people don't have contracts. Right now, we're paying everybody, whether they have a contract or not. So if you're going to have a motion that says we're going to continue to pay everyone, and then you change to the end of the year, and then you change the year end, then you're going to have to change another motion.
Okay.
So either do it to the 29th or agree now that you're going to continue school till June 15th, which I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I had Miss Johnson. I thought I saw your hand. And then I had Miss Dean, but she's just walked away.
Thank you. Who are these employees that we're talking about again? Are they the paras, the lunchroom monitors? Who else are we talking about? The crossing guards, I think it was. Because I'd like to know, I know we're paying them, but what are they doing right now that they're not working in the schools? Because people keep asking me these questions here because they're really concerned more than ever about people, people aren't working and they're getting paid and they're saying that they can go on unemployment. I mean, I want to make sure everybody has health care. That's my number one thing. I mean, they might do better on unemployment than getting paid by us at this point in time, and we keep their health insurance. But who are these people and what are they doing while they're not being worked? Can somebody answer that for me, please? Thank you.
Well, I'll jump in. I know that the teachers and the paraeducators are actually tangibly educating the children and providing support for students because that's what's happening. And I know it just from the experience of my own children. But I can't speak for every single employee in the district. So.
Dana, could you just provide some clarity? Oh, I'm sorry. Provide some clarity on that question. Certainly, I'll just start, and then, paraprofessionals, teachers, building principals, directors have they have set contracts in terms of days that they work and 180 days, so to speak. So that's pretty set. There are, and I'm just going at the top of my head, TIAs, crossing guards, because of the way that the contracts are written for the food service worker, it's pupil days. So these are counting as pupil days. So we're obligated to pay them. And the pupil days translate into 180 days, which we have to pay them. Substitute teachers, we're still.
They're not being paid unless.
Okay. Crossing guards. Go ahead, Dana.
Subs aren't getting paid unless they're a long-term sub that's in for a teacher and they're doing remote learning. So for the most part, they're not being paid. It's and I think the food service is still cooking, right? Mm-hmm. And the paras are working. It's just as you have the good list. I guess it's really the crossing guards and the lunch monitors, maybe. Dan? Do I have
those two groups definitely aren't working. There are some other people that aren't necessarily working. I don't think every para is working. Some are. But those two groups, the security guards at the high schools, they're not working. So there's lots of little groups of people. But the major groups, most of the major groups are working.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the security guards and possibly the crossing guards are part of one of the union contracts.
Only the security guards
Only
are,
the
not
security
the,
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Johnson, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. So I saw a lot of hands go up. I have Miss Ziem, then Miss Brown, then Miss Bishop.
I think it needs to be noted that the lunch monitors and the crossing guards don't get insurance. I'm not sure Ms. Johnson realizes that. They get, and they don't work a full week because those jobs, unless they work both as lunch monitor and as crossing guard, they don't get anywhere, you know, they get, 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon for a crossing guard. And maybe 2 hours at lunchtime. I don't know about the lunch because I'm not as familiar with that. So they are at the low end of the scale for the people that we employ as far as what they make. And so I was ready to make a motion that we pay these people until the 29th. Is that the date we agreed upon, Mrs. Raymond?
That's just a date that I threw out there to be, you know, we definitely know that we'll be in school that long. And then I thought we could have a longer discussion next week if people want to have that discussion. If not, we just make a motion next week to finish the year.
So I make a motion that we continue to pay the employees who are currently being paid until May 29th.
I'll second. Someone
Lots
else?
lots of people seconded it.
Okay,
Who are we writing down, Mr. Guarino? You?
I'll put myself down.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. So I would still like to give the people who had their hands up an opportunity to have their comments. So I had Miss Brown next and then Miss Bishop.
So before the motion, I had a couple questions. One, I actually have three questions. So one, how many people are we paying that essentially don't have the ability to work from home? I'm using lunch monitors and crossing guards as that example. And what do we have evidence that we're engaging paras properly and making sure that they are being able to assist the classroom teachers? Because that seems like that would alleviate a lot of stress off teachers if they knew they had a backup person to check in with kids or help with tutoring and that kind of thing. So do you want me to ask them all, or do you want me to all three of them, or do you want to answer them one at a time?
Dr. Moseley,
Be happy to.
what's your preference? Would you like her to list all of her questions, or would you like her to stop now? You give a couple answers and then continue.
Okay. All right. Let's stop now. Let's get the three questions answers, and then we can continue. Okay. All right. So the last part, a couple of questions I heard is, how do we know that all of the paras are engaged? Is that the last
That's
question?
part of it.
Okay. And, you know, I will say that we do have some paraprofessionals who are helping out, who are doing amazing work with kids. We also have paraprofessionals too, who work on like a one-on-one basis with our kids too. So we have instructional paras, we have behavioral paras in the district. So we do have some paras who are working. We also have some paras who are currently looking for some employment and some opportunities there. Mind you, it's in all fairness to our paras. Some of them are not technology savvy, and that's not a criticism. So we do offer some professional development for our paras to engage in terms of so that they can brush up on their skills. So to say that 100% of our paras are totally engaged, that would not be accurate to the board. I'd say that I can certainly do some research and get back to you in terms of the number. But we do have some paras who are doing some great things and certainly trying to do the best they can under these circumstances. Dr. McKinney and I actually had a conversation very similar to your question. Before I move on to your next question, Dr. McKinney, did you want to add anything or no?
I think that covers most of it. Just to elaborate, many of the Title I paras are submitting logs for hours, so they are kind of being accountable and in order to be compensated by the grant. And we do have a number of Title I paras that are also looking to become highly qualified or certified at the state level, and using this time to engage in professional development. They have to take a test, and then they have to apply to the state. So, thank you.
Ms. Brown, would you repeat your first question?
Actually, that was, and I was kind of curious, how many folks do we have that are truly can't work from home? And I use the example of lunch monitors and crossing guards. Do we know what that number of people is?
Yeah, do you have an idea, just a ballpark, how many crossing guards we have in the district-ish?
Dan or Dana?
There's probably about
Both?
25 or 30 crossing guards, and there's probably about 50 or 60 lunch monitors. Keep in mind, crossing guard works a couple hours a day, and a lunch monitor works about 3 hours a day. So they're part-time positions, typically held by older folks, retired people. No benefits for any of those people. They don't work enough to get them.
Excellent, thank you. And that actually is my next question. How many people on that hourly pay scale that would be outside the bargaining unit agreement, like of the teachers, use our insurance? And then the piggyback on that, we oftentimes hear how many of these folks pay us money back at the end of the week because their hourly wages don't cover their insurance costs. Are we talking like, we have people who do that? So does that mean we have 3 people who do that, or do we have 50 people who do that? Because that does actually make a difference to me. Go ahead.
Dana can answer the question.
Yeah, so if you're talking about the paras, what happens with the paras is they're not, for health insurance, they're not treated the same as everybody else. So we only pay for the single person para. So it would be, if it was you, it would be only you, not your kids, not your husband. Whereas the rest of us, we can choose, we pay 80% for everybody in our family. We can have a single plan, a 2-person plan, a family plan, and the district covers 80% and we do 20%, but not the paras. Only that staff person gets covered, and then they have to pay for their family members the full cost of the insurance. So they're at 80%, but their kids and their spouse is at 100%. And that's where we get that their salary can't cover that amount, and they have to pay hundreds of dollars if they choose a family plan in addition to what comes out of their check.
Right. So I understand that process. How many people do we have that are under those circumstances? How many times do we get paid back at the end of the week in the district?
Paid back?
How many people are actually using our family health care plan that their wages don't cover their work? Are we taught? Do you understand what I'm asking? That they are.
It's mostly the paras. Right. For that, it's really limited to them. And honestly, I can't look it up because I'm on remote. I'm off of remote desktop. Otherwise, I could probably look it up, but I can't say off the top of my head. And it's really hard to discern because the only thing coming out of their check, you can see what comes out of their check, but the check that's monthly goes straight to the city. So we actually, and we know they're enrolled in a family plan. Those are the ones, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. There's 440 paras.
Okay. Ms. O'Gare, could you get back to Ms. Brown via email with an answer to her question?
Sure.
Did you have another question, Ms. Brown?
No, I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Okay. I just want to kind of focus us back because I know that many of us have the joint special building committee this evening. and that starts at 7. So we need to make sure that we're off of here by 6:30. So focusing back on Ms. Zeem's motion, I had Ms. Bishop who had her hand up and hasn't spoken yet. Ms. Bishop?
Ms. Brown asked my question about, who's relying on us for health insurance. I don't have any questions, but I wish we did better for health insurance, but whatever. We'll address that another time. But she answered my questions, so I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Bishop. Is there any other discussion regarding Ms. Deem's motion regarding paying people through the end of May? Okay, I don't see any. We're ready to vote. Mr. Corbino, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Ziem,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Gilio,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Raymond,
Yes.
Ms. Oden,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-0.
Okay, great. And we'll revisit this again next week when we talk about the end of the year and how all that works. One thing I did want to just clarify, it sounded to me like the questions from Ms. Johnson and Ms. Brown and Ms. Bishop were trying to get at whether or not some employees would be better off on unemployment. Is that kind of where you were going, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, and I guess my question also would be that the employees, I guess, who aren't working, are they going to be entitled to, I guess they probably get the federal funding because they're not working right now. So I'm kind of curious, if they're not working, how many employees aren't working at this, I don't care where they are, the ones who are just not physically working at this point in time. So I'm just curious about that.
No.
So we said the crossing guards and the lunch monitors are
Right.
not working.
I want the number. I just want a number, basically. That's all.
Would those people even be eligible for unemployment based on the hours that they work? Like,
Right.
not that I don't want to lay people off. Let's get that very clear. But if the district did that with certain individuals, the crossing guards and lunch runners, would they be eligible for unemployment?
I'm not so sure. They have to have a certain amount in the last, I think, 3 months. I think it's something like 1,400
Okay. All
to
right.
be eligible. Don't quote me on that. That's unemployment rules.
Okay. No, I think we just want what's best for the district employees and their families. So that's where I thought that was going. Okay. So the next item is high school grading. Everyone.
Ms. Raymond, I have a motion I'd like to bring forward.
Okay, Ms. Oden.
I move that our high schools adopt a hybrid grading system to ensure fairness and flexibility for our students and teachers. A pass-fail audit scale will be used for all semester 2 and quarter 4 courses. A with distinction label will be allowed for teachers who want to apply it when assigning a pass grade for students. Teachers of year-long courses and/or 2-year programs will decide whether to use a pass-fail audit or a traditional letter grade scale for their particular course. Whatever scale is decided upon by the teacher, it must be applied consistently when grading all students within the teacher's course, meaning all students must be graded with a pass-fail audit or the traditional letter grade scale. A teacher cannot use 2 scales within the same course. Grades from any and all courses for the second semester will not be used when compiling GPA but may appear on an individual's transcript. If I can get a second, I would like to speak to my motion.
I
I'll
second.
second it.
Oh,
Yeah.
my goodness.
Oh,
That's good.
Okay, lots of seconds.
Okay. I offer this motion as one that gives as much fairness and flexibility as possible during these unprecedented times. I have read every email that I received and tried to respond to each one. I realize this is a complex issue as it deals with multiple students, multiple teachers, multiple families, and multiple courses across multiple levels. My position on how best to deal with our grading system has evolved as I continue to read emails and reflect upon what I was hearing in those emails. I finally came to an option that I saw as a way to give as much flexibility as possible to all stakeholders. Though I will admit it is not perfect, but I'm not sure there is a perfect solution that will please everyone. I eliminated the letter grade for second semester being used when compiling GPA in my motion for what I believe is a compelling reason. Last spring, 5 or 6 students representing both North and South high schools gave a presentation to the board on the need to consider changes to class rank. They offered much research and reasoning, but one point they made absolutely shocked me. They said that competition for a high GPA was so fierce that it was leading students to hack into classmates' accounts who they felt were competing in class rank with them and to see what scores their classmates had received on recent tests. I found that practice appalling and the behavior completely unacceptable for students in so many ways. I felt strongly that it needed to be addressed and therefore brought a motion to establish a committee that was comprised of multiple stakeholders to study the GPA and class rank issue. I felt if the board did not address it, we would be complicit in what was happening and would be encouraging this abhorrent behavior by not taking action. The committee has been working, but unfortunately, due to remote learning, we have not had an update or presentation from the committee on its recommendations to address this serious problem. Also, I have heard from teachers across various levels who have shared concerns about seeing some students submit work that is of a higher caliber than before remote learning was implemented. Furthermore, I have heard of a reluctance to give summative assessments due to concerns that some students with more resources and available outside assistance would have an advantage over other students who might not. The issue of equity among students has been voiced by many of our teachers. Even some of our students feel the issue is affecting many of their peers negatively, and they are concerned about the equity issue. One teacher in an honors class wrote this in an email while referring to remote learning. Quote, "The situation itself has created a path to failure. In my conversations with students, they tell me they are sad, depressed, anxious, and unsure. They are watching siblings, in some cases working. In some cases, they won't share with me any more than," quote from the student, "school is the very least of my problems right now," unquote. The teacher goes on to say, "I am loath to put more on their plates in the form of academic pressure." I fully support that teacher's position and would challenge anyone who would be comfortable assigning an F to that student. Really, how valid would that grade be? How demoralized would that student be returning to school if they return to school? I know there are probably far too many students to count who are in the same dire straits as a student. These are not normal times. I know from all the emails I have received, there are many more students who are in similar situations. Our teachers and students are dealing with a pandemic that has no heart, and the devastation it is creating is crushing. Our governor has asked that flexibility be offered during these times. I agree with his position. Therefore, I am not willing to place more pressure on our teachers and students by holding fast to a grading scale that gives them little flexibility. To rely on a grading scale that is used in normal times does not seem fair to use these in these times that are so far from normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. That was very well said. All right.
This is difficult for me because coming to the board as a teacher, you carry that teacher attitude with you, and I am hearing desperate cries from some of our teachers, many of them. So it took a long time for this to evolve, and it evolved over a period of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oden. Do we have any comments or questions? I see, hold on, I'm going to write people down. I see Miss Giglio, Mr. Guarino, Ms. Johnson. Anyone else have their hand at this time? Okay, so we'll go in that order. I'm sorry? Okay, so we'll go Ms. Giglio, then Mr. Guarino, and then Ms. Johnson.
Okay, I wanted to thank Mrs. Oden for all of the hard work that she must have done to be able to synthesize the information that we got from so many parents, students, and teachers on the grading issue. And I'm amazed that she was able to respond to every single email. But she certainly took to heart everything that was said and seems to have found a really good way or a really good solution that should work pretty much for everybody. As she said, there's no way to make it perfect because these are imperfect times, but I really applaud her effort. And I think the motion sounds really, really good to me. So I would support it.
Thank you, Ms. Giglio. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I think that Ms. Oden has done a great job coming up with that solution. But I do have some reservations. I'm just wondering what the impact is going to be on grading, on letter grades, on the GPA of some kids, and I'm just hoping that we don't create more problems than we try to solve. So I'm on the fence on this, and when you get a chance, maybe before we take the vote, I'd like to have the motion read again because it was a long motion. So I'm not. I just want to hear the motion again when you get a chance after people speak.
Okay.
So thank you.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson, did you want to hear the motion again before or after you speak?
I think I'd like to speak first, and then we can, if I'm off a little bit, then we can do the motion again. It was a long motion. I kind of get it. I'd like to thank Mrs. Oden too, because it was very well thought out, and it was a very good motion, and it kind of spelled everything out. And I'm like you, Mr. Guarino. I'm on the fence a little bit. I think pass, fail, incomplete, or audit is good for some students, but I think the ones that really worked all year long, and these GPAs, and being at this point in their time, they've worked hard for this, and I understand what Mrs. Oden said. But I think the problem I see is that if the teacher decides just to go to the pass fail, and these kids that want the GPA and the class ranking, they're not going to get that because the teacher went to that one system. It's going to be one or the other in that class. And that's where if I'm understood it right, that's where I have my problem. I think that the students that need that class ranking and the calculation of the GPA, I think that has to stay because, I'm just not comfortable doing the broad thing because one size fits all can't work at this point, which we're trying to because of the circumstances. But that's my small piece. I don't mind going to pass, fail, incomplete, and do an audit. but it's that one little piece there that I have the reservations on. Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Ms. Oden, could you please reread your motion?
Oh, sure. And I apologize, it is long, but I wanted to, it's a hybrid. I move that our high schools adopt a hybrid grading system to ensure fairness and flexibility for our students and teachers. A pass-fail audit scale will be used for all semester 2 and quarter 4 courses. A with distinction label will be allowed for teachers who want to apply it when assigning a pass grade for students. Teachers of year-long courses and/or 2-year programs will decide whether to use a pass-fail audit or a traditional letter grade for their particular course. Whatever scale is decided upon by the teacher, it must be applied consistently when grading all students within the teacher's course. That means all students must be graded with a pass-fail audit or the traditional letter grade scale. A teacher cannot use 2 scales within the same course. Grades from any and all courses for the second semester will not be used when compiling GPA, but may appear on an individual's transcript. Oh,
Sorry, I couldn't seem to hit the unmute button. Thank you, Ms. Oden. Does anyone else have any comments or questions on Ms. Oden's motion? Ms. Ziem.
It's probably something I just missed, but when we're saying that they have to determine which way they're going to do it and then be consistent, does that need to be determined at the onset, or can they determine it at the end, or does it matter? Did I confuse you?
I would think at this point they would like to tell students. I know there are some people who say, well, if you give that pass-fail option to students, they'll stop working. Quite frankly, I think those that care about learning, I don't think that would be a big issue at all. And most of the full year courses are for AP courses, CTE courses, and running start courses, and there might be a couple others, but I don't think there are a lot of full year courses. And I think full year courses, those students are pretty committed to their studies.
I have a couple questions. So,
No, please go ahead, Dr. Moseley.
so just so I'm clear, so the teachers can decide on whether to, for full year courses, they can decide to either use the letter grade or the pass fail. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So if the student wants to appeal that, then and wants to go for, let's say they're not happy with a C, they want to go to a pass fail, what's the mechanism for that safeguard?
Well, I guess for me, I look at it as the student made the decision and they have to stay with it. You can't look at your grade and say, oh, geez, I wish I didn't get that. I should have gone to a pass fail. So I just think the decision is the students and they have to live with that.
But your motion says the decision is the teachers.
Teachers, what?
Yeah, so the student has the right to appeal the grade, or that's why there
Is that what's in there now?
yes, there's a grading process in which we follow in terms of how we assign grades. Essentially, what I'm hearing, and I'm just reiterating, is that now we have various grading systems that's going to take place in all of our individual classes according to the teacher into the semester. So how is it that, let's say for equity purposes, a parent may appeal one of the grades or might not want that grading system? Where does that appeal go to? Does it go, like, because we're introducing a new motion, a new policy, and students and parents have the right to question that. So what's the mechanism that the board shall yield in terms of disputing the grade, disputing the transfer over to the grade, just so that we can follow up on that.
I had no idea there was an appeal of grading. Honestly, I don't have an answer for you.
So, Mr. Richards, can you just explain a little, if I could just turn it over to Mr. Richard, can you just talk a little bit about the current process about grading, and in the event that you part of the process, and in the event that a student, or in this case, a teacher misgrades a student, how is that followed up?
So I think what you're getting at, Dr. Moseley, is if there's two different systems going on, and I think what I'm trying to see what you're getting at is if one teacher chooses to go pass fail, one teacher chooses to not, how does that student have any kind of recourse where they might be in the same course? Because I believe, Ms. Oden, your motion still allows for GPA and class rank to be calculated at the end of this year, because we would be giving letter grades for full year courses. Our semester one courses are already in. So I think that would be an interesting conversation if a student did have a teacher choose one system or the other, when their peers might be in the same course, different teacher. So there could be some playing off of each other in that instance.
Let me clarify that, Mr. Richard. My motion says that GPA will not be calculated from the second semester. The second semester grade will not be calculated into the GPA, but will appear on transcripts for the student.
Okay.
If it's a letter grade. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds to me like the purpose of this motion is to make sure that is to be as fair as possible to everyone, so that individual students who might have gotten a better grade but are having connectivity issues, or issues at home, or some of the other things you described, won't be penalized because they couldn't be in a physical classroom, while also allowing those students who are high achieving and who are, taking honors classes and such, to continue to have that focus that they're having right now. Is that correct?
Yes, that, but several teachers have brought up the fact that they're seeing work be turned in that is a higher caliber than what they had seen the student present when they were in the physical classroom. That was a concern that several teachers have expressed in their emails.
Okay. Any further discussion? Ms. Ziem, and then Ms. Brown?
I would like to go back to my question. I think I hear Mrs. Oden saying that it would be determined at the onset, in the beginning, as to which way it was going to be done. Do we need, if that is the case, if I understood her correctly, do we need to include that as part of the motion?
I guess for me, if we adopt this, it would go into effect for the fourth quarter and the rest of the semester for semester 2.
So teachers would have to decide in the next week or so, like what would the deadline be for a teacher deciding which pass, fail, or traditional grading? Traditional competency.
Yes, when quarter 4 begins.
So,
thank you. That's what I understood. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Moseley.
just the logistical piece. So who would the teacher notify in terms of this? Would this be something that the teacher would email the principal and say they're doing? Is there any way for I'm just making, fourth quarter begins next week. Is that correct, Mr. Richards? When's
Started this week.
Okay, so I'm sorry, by Friday, fourth quarter would start. Is it the teacher's responsibility to email the parents and notify the kids the grading process in which he or she is engaging in? Or would that go to Mr. Richards? And once they decide that, are we saying now that they cannot switch back? Just what's the parameters on this motion?
I would expect the teacher to let Mr. Richard know, as well as all of the students in their class and the parents, so that would all be aware. And I think once a student heads down the road, you don't change.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Brown and then Ms. Ziem.
I was just going to speak in support of the motion. Even though it's seems like a really difficult task, because I do favor competition. I think it's good, and I think it's good to have kids pushing each other. However, it's been very surprising to me, the number of emails we've gotten from teachers, and primarily they've been AP teachers or honors teachers or foreign language teachers. So you've got departments those kids are taking those classes by choice, not just to graduate. Those are the teachers that have been putting the most support behind moving towards a pass-fail, this kind of a system, because they feel like their kids they're seeing a lot of work that does not look authentic, and that's not the kind of ethics that we want to promote here in Nashua. That's number one. And the other group and then they just seem like they're very supportive of letting these kids rise to the occasion and push themselves to turn in good work, because they have a moral compass that drives them to do so. And the other group of folks that we've seen the most support by have been students that are on that kind of AP collegiate track. And I wanted to read one paragraph from it's a blog, but written by Jeffrey Lamb, who we were all the board members were sent this email. He's a student over at Nashua South. And just to give you an example, the title of this article that he wrote on his blog was "Let's Move to Pass Fail, or at least give students the choice." The next article on his blog was "Whether you should be disappointed to be waitlisted in an Ivy League." The next blog was "Let's take a closer look at the National Honor Society." One of them, "Can forced close businesses due to COVID-19 sue for just compensation?" Those are all, the reason I'm reading you the titles of those articles is to show you that this kid is in the category that we seem to be concerned about the most by moving to a pass-fail system. And he writes, 2.5 pages on why the system would be good and fair and equitable. But there's one paragraph I want to read to us. Thank you for your patience, everyone. "The most compelling reason to adopt pass-fail is the fact that Google Classroom can never truly replicate a classroom experience. It's good that teachers have announced online office hours for students to gain additional instruction. And it's unfortunate that modern technology allows students to connect with their teachers. Oh, it is fortunate that our modern technology allows students and teachers to connect with each other. But no one can say the in-person experience and virtual experience are equal. Raising a hand to ask a question, collaborating with other students on an in-class assignment, working side by side with a teacher, these quintessential actions of an education are no longer possible or severely limited with online schooling. As a result, a letter grade during this online term will not and should not be comparable as the same letter grade in a previous term. For instance, a graphic design student's B grade received under online schooling circumstances is not equal footing as the previous graphic design students as a B grade in the classroom. Simply put, traditional grading will be ineffective in evaluating students in this term. If a pass-fail approach would make more sense. So I'm thinking this actually even as a broader scope, thinking about the quality of those GPAs that people seem to be concerned with. That's pretty accurate. If you get a B on online learning and a B in a classroom where you've been working for an AP class for the last 3 months, they are not the same B. They're not the same value. You haven't learned the same information, but we do need teachers to be flexible with their grading scales if we want to have anybody be promoted the next school year, correct? I think out of all the arguments I've heard, that seems the most just, that we're putting these kids on a more reasonable playing field for their usual level of competition. And I think the key to Miss Oden's motion was that she has said specifically that we will not take your second semester grades into your into the overall GPA. I realize that that does take a lot of work on calculation from administration and teachers' perspective, but we've already even had some generous teachers send us emails that they're willing to even do that by hand if that's what it takes, because they've realized that this really is what is best for our students. So thank you. I appreciate your patience. And even though it's a tough decision, I do believe that this is probably the best approach.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. And Ms. Ziem, and I just want to note the time. It's now 6:15, so we only have about 20 minutes at the most before we have to conclude our meeting.
I just wanted to ask administration, the time obviously is a small window in order to enact this. And so I would just like to ask both the superintendent as well as the South principal that was just speaking, and North principal, if he's there and wants to speak, if they have any problems that they see with this that we're not discussing, that we haven't considered.
I'll defer to Keith on this.
I think there's going to be a lot of logistic questions that are going to come my way that I'm not sure I'll have the answers for tonight or tomorrow morning when they come to me. Just to be honest, I'll have to work through that. Some of the things that are coming to mind right now is, and I'm sorry, I'm just processing this. If we're not using semester 2 grades for a GPA or class rank, majority of our type of AP courses are full year. So you do not really get your credit until you complete the year, and that is the final grade at the end of the school year. So would we not be including that grade in? Just the way that we set up the system at the beginning of the year drives GPA class rank. If the motion was we are not going to calculate GPA and class rank at all this year, I think this would be very easier to do with the system. If we're going to include semester 1 grades in, if we're going to try and go back and add in semester 1 grades that for AP courses or full year courses, I think we're going to run into a lot of logistic issues. I think if it's just we don't calculate this year, it's a off year, it's a pandemic, it's worldwide, it's an asterisk, fine. I think that might be a little bit easier for us to calculate and to figure out. I think we'll run into issues as we go down, because this is not just a 1-year problem that we're going to deal with this. This is freshmen who would have this for 4 years, as we continue to calculate. And to have that on a spreadsheet that we're keeping somewhere, it has to be in the system for us to track our students all the way. So I'm not sure that we would be able to calculate GPA and class rank this year if we were to not use semester 2. I think another issue that would come up potentially is students might be in, we have a weighted system. Student might be in an honors class semester 1, and the other student didn't get it until semester 2. And that's just because that's the way the schedule fell. Is that now putting that student behind the other kid because X2 spit out a schedule for that kid, for their peer, to have it semester 1 and they didn't get it, so therefore they're in a pass-fail system. So I think there's a lot of questions that would come up, and to be honest with you, most of those would probably be centered around GPA and class rank.
So
Go ahead, Dr. Moseley.
I guess if the motion goes through and we can't answer the questions internally, we may need to bring this back to the board for clarity on how to do this and for feedback. We have to just digest this, and certainly we'll need to do that. We just don't have a lot of questions right now, and certainly Nate's not here, so if it goes through, then we may need to revisit it. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I think those are both valid points, but I also think it's worth it to have, if this goes through, have you really work it through and then let us know if there become problems, because we can always make another motion in the future.
Thank you.
But I do take the point that, you know, I feel for the AP kids and they work so hard, but I'm also hearing from colleges and the AP exams aren't even happening. Like they're going to be online and only for half the class. So this whole pandemic, I just like I get very emotional when I think about our poor seniors.
Yeah, tough.
So I don't have any helpful words at that point. So if people are ready, I'd like to go ahead and have the roll on Ms. Oden's motion. Mr. Guarino? I don't see anybody objecting.
Okay. On the motion, Mr. Guarino votes no. Ms. Johnson?
No.
Ms. Ziem?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-2.
All right.
Okay.
All right, great.
Okay. Thank you, guys. And so if you can let me know as we move forward if there are any speed bumps.
No problem.
Okay, so the last item I have on the agenda for this evening is student belongings, but I also want to throw in their staff belongings
Yes.
because we had to shut down the schools with such little notice. Lots of people have left their items in the building, and at some point we need to be able to have people reunited with the things that belong to them.
Absolutely.
So how's that going to happen?
So we're developing a schedule for both staff and students. We recognize that both parties left very, very abruptly and quickly. So we have to develop a schedule according to the building. For staff to re-enter the South is very different than faculty entering Ledge Elementary School. So within the next couple of weeks, I know that Dan Donovan with Sean Smith have developed a framework for each of the buildings, and now it's just developing a schedule first for the students to return and grab their items and families, and eventually our teachers. What we don't want to do is have everyone, I'd say for instance, we don't want to have large amount of people showing up. We're going to space it out. It's probably going to take some time. The larger the building, the more the time. We want to make a schedule for our kids to pick up students, at the high school. I'll just use for an example to not only pick up their belongings, they need to also drop off their books. We have student athletes who also need to return athletic gear and uniforms as well. And we are developing that schedule. My hope is that to have that out by sometime next week specifically per building. In other words, the schedule will be germane according to the building, and then we'll publicize that for our faculty and for our students and for our community as well.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Moseley. I'm very pleased to hear that, and I don't know if public health could be, helpful in determining like how to do this in a safe way, because I know we just want to make sure that we're following all of the guidelines so that we don't share germs as we reunite people with their items. So thank you.
We have shared, we've shared our plan with public health already.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Donovan.
And they've responded, so they'll be part of the whole process.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Donovan. That takes a weight off my shoulders. Okay, did anyone have any questions or comments about student and staff belongings? I don't see anybody saying yes or any hands waving at me. So that is the last item I had on the docket for this evening. I know many of us have the Joint Special Building Committee coming up at 7 via a different Zoom link or WebEx, I think, link. So if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Wow, that was a lot. Okay, on the motion to adjourn, Mr. Guarino, could you please call the roll?
Okay, on the motion to adjourn, Mr. Guarino votes yes. Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Ziem? Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Ms. Brown? Ms.
She said
Raymond?
yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Hey, Brown, did she say yes?
Ms. Brown, can you repeat?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Raymond was yes. Ms. Oden?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:26.
Good
Right.
night,
Thank you, everyone,
Thank
and
you.
I will
Thank you.
see most of you in 32 minutes.
Have a good
Okay.
evening.